I think पाकिस्तान ने last 4 or 5 years में enough show कर दिया कि security भी बहुत अच्छी है, players को बहुत comfortable feel, जो भी आ रहे हैं PSL के लिए वो भी बहुत comfortable feel कर रहे हैं.
Absolutely delighted to talk to one of the finest batsmen from Australia. He's from Australia, but I think he's a massive fan base in Pakistan as well because of his Pakistan heritage. We have Usman Khawaja with us, who is with Islamabad United in this PSL. Usman, first of all, welcome to this show and tell us how excited are you ahead of your first PSL?
Thank you. I'm very excited. I haven't obviously played the PSL yet. I've talked about it before. We've always had clashes with our domestic competition. To come over to the PSL, so I've never had the opportunity. So obviously bad news that the tournament had to be delayed and restructured, but obviously good for me because now I'm in my holiday period in Australia, so I can play in the PSL finally. So I'm very excited, and obviously I would have wished it was in Pakistan, but this is the next best thing, so looking forward to it.
Well, that would have been your first opportunity to play in the country of your birth. So was it a reason behind signing this contract?
It would have been the first time, playing in Pakistan. I think the only reason I haven't played PSL before now is because, as I said, our domestic competition runs the exact same time. So I can't obviously get out of that. I'm playing for Australia, I'm playing for Queensland, my home state. And I've never had the opportunity to play the PSL. I would have loved to play it before. I've known plenty of guys from Australia that have gone over to play. Obviously at the start, my good friend Shane Watson played in the early years. So I've known plenty of people who've come and played the PSL. I just haven't had the opportunity. So I think when I had the opportunity, even it's only half a tournament, but I had an opportunity to play this year. So I took it.
Usman, I think a lot of people, they will be interested in knowing your Pakistan connection. Obviously, you were very young when you moved to Australia. I think you were just 5 in the early 90s. So have you been to Pakistan recently?
Not recently. I think I've been back since we moved in 1990, early 91. I've probably been back probably four or five times maybe. And I haven't been back for the last 10 years. So I went back a fair bit in the first maybe 10, 15 years that we moved to Australia. Moved back, we went back and visited, whatnot. So I have been there, just not in the last 10 years. But I mean, my parents lived in Pakistan for, 35 years. My brothers had grown up there. My family was very much Pakistani when moved to Australia. So I grew up in a Pakistani household, really. I spoke Urdu to my mom, and to my dad was both. But to my mom was always Urdu, and we always ate Pakistani food. The culture was very Pakistani, which made it difficult sometimes living in Australia. So there was, I lived in Australia, and I think I've got the best of both worlds because I obviously grew up with Australian friends and went to school in Australia, but I also grew up very Pakistani, just where my family was and how they'd grown up. So I think I have a good balance.
You talked about Pakistan food. So do you still love your biryani, or now you have developed taste for cheeseburgers or maybe steaks?
No, it's funny when I lived at home, because my mum made Pakistani food all the time. She makes one of the best biryanis I've had. She makes a beautiful chicken curry, her rotis and parathas and everything else it's beautiful. And I probably took it for granted when I was younger, because I was eating it all the time, and I was like, no, Mom, I want cheeseburgers, I want pizzas, I want this stuff. And then it wasn't until I moved away from home when I was about 24, it was about 10 years ago. And now whenever I see my mom again, I'm like, okay, Mom, please, I want 5 days in a row, I want 10 days in a row, I want Pakistani food. I don't get this anymore. So I took it for granted. I do love Pakistani food. Even at the moment, we've got a menu here at the hotel, and I've been ordering a few Pakistani dishes. It's been nice. I love Pakistani food. I think now that I live away from home, I love it even more.
Well, I think once you start eating biryani, there is no coming back. And I think that has happened with you as well.
Dangerous. That's what I say to my mom whenever I'm over. She's like, oh, I'll make you this. I'm like, Mom, I can't eat all that. She was like, I'll make you this paratha. I'm like, one, that's it, no more. And then she knows. It took her a little bit of a while because I sometimes eat curries on their own without the bread, and my mom found that really weird, and I was like, "Oh, I just can't eat the bread. I can't do it." She's like, okay, but it took her a while to get around her head. Now she's used to it.
And Usman, you were born in Islamabad. So talking about cricket, do you have any memories of playing cricket in Pakistan, or it was in Australia where you took up this sport?
I had memories playing when I was really young, just before we left. I remember I put 2 thigh pads on my legs as pads with my brothers, because they used to play. My brothers played a lot, and my dad loves cricket. He loves cricket more than anyone I've ever known. But I do remember we went back when I was about 6 years old. My parents, it was probably 2 years after we were in Australia, and we were there for about a month in Islamabad, and I played cricket non-stop for a whole month. My dad still talks about it. I would play in the mornings, I play in the afternoons, I play in the evenings, we put the floodlights on. I made friends with the local kids around the neighborhood in Islamabad, and I played non-stop. And my dad and even my brothers say when I came back from there, my cricket had gone to another level. And I was only young, I was only 6 years old, but they said before I was okay. By the time I came back, my brothers were bowling to me and I was whacking him around everywhere. So there was a bit of development in Pakistan at a very, very young age.
So when you started cricket, I mean, did you have any cricketing hero from Pakistan, or just because you spent most of your time in Australia, so you always looked up to Australian players?
No, most of my heroes when I was young were not Australian. They're either, from subcontinent Pakistan mostly. Saeed Anwar was probably one of my favorite batsmen growing up. Him and Brian Lara were my 2 favorites. I always stuck close to my left-handed batsman. I think the way Saeed Anwar played the game, how beautiful he was, the way he used to flick the ball off his pads, and the way he free-flowing game, I used to love watching him bat. And it's hard to go past then people like Wasim Akram after that, and everyone loved Wasim Akram. So these guys I definitely watch. I watch all of them. Like Waqar Younis bowling reverse swing, I used to love watching him reverse swing that ball. These guys at a young age were definitely, and it wasn't until about 10, when I turned about 10 or 11, then I started liking more Australian players. But before then, it was mostly players from outside of Australia, West Indies players, Pakistani players in particular. But that's because my dad grew up in Pakistan. He still loved Pakistan. He still does to an extent. I know he supports Pakistani cricket. He watches it. He keeps an eye on it. He grew up there. So, I think it was only natural that my brothers liked Pakistani cricket and Pakistani players. So was I when I was younger.
Well, talking more about your cricket, there's one thing that I really wanted to talk about. It's about that big bash season, 2015-16. I think before that season, most of the people that did not see you as a T20 specialist. But in that season, I think you just played 4 innings, 2 centuries, and you played a huge role in Sydney Thunder's win. So tell us what changed in that season.
It wasn't that particular season. I think it was a culmination of 3 or 4 seasons before that. I was developing my skills in white ball cricket, whether it was one-day cricket. I was becoming more dynamic, changing a few things, and then I was trying to concentrate the same thing on T20 cricket, because there's a lot of people who say if you want to concentrate on red ball cricket, you have to just train red ball cricket. And I was getting a lot of those people saying that if you want to play test cricket, you just have to concentrate red ball, and I didn't agree with that. I thought if I wanted to become better cricket all round, I had to train all facets of the game, and then all of them would help the other facets. And I found me working on my T20 cricket actually helped my test cricket a lot, just because it allowed me to test a lot of things that I wouldn't have done if I was just playing red ball cricket. So I tried a lot of different things. I was working on a lot of different things, T20 specific things. And I got the opportunity to play a few games that year. I was playing test match cricket, that's why I only played 4 games that year in the Big Bash. But the 4 games I did play, I performed pretty well. I performed quite well for Thunder before that too, for the 4 years before that. It was only that I didn't get a really big score. I didn't get a really big 100. I got a lot of 50s and 60s. So I just kind of snuck under the radar a little bit, but I felt like my game was progressing every year until that point, and then finally I had a couple of good innings.
Yeah, even in the final, you scored at 70 for Thunder when they won the final. And after that, based on, or I would say that largely based on that season, you were selected to play for Australia in the T20 World Cup. And Australia, they even had to drop Aaron Finch and push David Warner down the order. I mean, because you were in such a superb form. So now with another T20 World Cup coming up this year, and it might be here in the UAE, are you still keen to make a comeback, or do you think that you can be in that Australian team for that World Cup?
It depends. You never know what can happen. If you score runs, if you do well enough, anything can happen. I think right now, I'm obviously not in the squad to go over. I think they're going over to the West Indies. I'm not in that squad, so unlikely at this stage, I think. But to be honest, things in cricket can change like that. So you never know. You know, one week you're nowhere, and the next week you're on top of the world, and vice versa. So I've dealt with it. I've been through all of it, so I never take it for granted. I know how quickly things can change. I train hard, I play hard, I give them 100% for whatever team I play. It doesn't matter whether I'm playing state cricket, international cricket, or even club cricket back in Australia. I make sure I always give 100%. So that doesn't change for me. I feel like if I do that consistently enough, then I'll get back to the top, inshallah, and be playing for Australia in hopefully more than one format.
Well, you talked about more than one format, and even though the focus right now is on T20 cricket, but when we think of you and the UAE, one innings that comes to mind is that 141 that you scored against Pakistan in the fourth innings to save the match in Dubai. I think Australia, they started day 5 with three wickets down, and you batted for 522 minutes. So take us back to that day. I mean, what motivated you to play such a gritty knock and save the game for Australia?
It's funny, you don't. It wasn't something that I was like, I'm gonna be there at the end of the day and win this, or tie this game for Australia and do all this stuff. It was more about, I was just batting. I batted well the first innings. I felt like I missed out on 100 first innings. I think I got 87 and got caught bat pad. I felt like I missed out on 100 first innings. So second innings, it was just about batting and seeing how long I could push this game out for, because I knew the longer we pushed the game out for, the harder it become Pakistan, the more they start to worry. Because I've been in the opposite shoes. I've been, the fielding team when you're trying to get a team out. The closer the game gets, the harder the game gets for fielding teams. So I was just concentrating on getting partnerships with anyone I wasn't really thinking about the end of the day. And it just worked out that I just took it 1 hour at a time, one session, another hour, another session, and it just kept going and batting. But honestly, it's become a blur, because it was like it is right now in Dubai. It was so hot. I've never sweated like that in my entire. I'm not a big sweater, and my whole clothes were drenched. I had to change my outfit every session because I was just so wet from sweat. So it was more of a mental battle that innings than a physical battle, because my body was going, but your mind sort of wants to be like, oh, you're getting tired now. You're like, no, just keep going. So that's the thing that most stood out for me in that innings, is that batting fourth innings is never easy, but to do it in conditions that we had, that made it a bit more nicer.
And Usman, I think in that season you were putting up some really nice performances, because after that series, Australia, they played in India, where you played a key role, and you guys won the ODI series. And then you came back to UAE, and once again you played a key role, and Australia won that ODI series 5-0. And then you had some decent performances in the World Cup as well. I think your average since in that year 2019 in ODIs was around 50. But when we look at the current Australian team, I mean, with all this talk of issues with the top order or even in the middle order, do you get a bit frustrated that your name hasn't come up since the last World Cup?
Yeah, I was very frustrated. I was frustrated when I got dropped too from the ODI side, because I think I was in the top 3 or 4 run scorers in the world at the time. I batted pretty much, outbatted the majority of people in international cricket. And I knew, obviously, we got a strong top order with Aaron Finch and David Warner and Steve Smith, but I just assumed I'd be the backup batsman that went on the trip, and I wasn't even the backup. I got dropped, wasn't even in the squad. That made me really angry, and I told the selectors that, and I talked to selectors that, and I talked to them about that, and I told them pretty bluntly how I felt, and they knew how I felt. I feel like most times I'm quite reasonable when I get, if I get dropped and I feel like, okay, I could have done more, I'll just accept it. That was probably the one time in my career I felt like, I don't agree with this decision. It was really frustrating. As you said, I was averaging 50 at the time. We made the semi-finals of the World Cup. Unfortunately, I got injured for the semi-final game, so I missed out. We lost, but it was still disappointing to end the note on My last game that I played for Australia in one day was my hamstring injury, but other than that, I was in the Australian team every single game. So yeah, it was really frustrating. Still is frustrating to an extent because if I missed out on a series, if I didn't get any runs for 5-6 games, I think I could probably sit back and be like, okay, I can take that decision. But I think that was one of the few decisions where I didn't agree with.
And now with a lot of cricket coming up, I mean, there's an Ashes series, and then Australia, they are due to tour Pakistan as well. I mean, if that tour happens, it will be their first tour to Pakistan in some 24 years. So are you keen to make a comeback in international cricket, or you are seeing yourself as a T20 freelancer?
No, definitely. I want to play international cricket. And I'm still talking to selectors about it. I keep in touch with Justin Langer about it. And, at the end of the day, runs is the currency. You got to get runs, and it's a bit of runs, good luck. Well, not good luck, but luck and a bit of timing. All those things go together. If they do go together and they come at the right time, inshallah, I'll be back in that team. I still have the goal to play for Australia. I love to play in this Ashes, and that's one of the goals. But at the end of the day, I have to be scoring runs. So one can't happen without the other. So that's all I'll focus on at the moment. If I'm scoring runs, I'll give myself the best opportunity to get picked. If I'm not scoring runs, then there's no reason to pick me. So I think that's the most important thing. I would love to obviously go around and play T20 cricket, something I wanted to do for a long time, but it makes it very hard because if I want to try to play for Australia, I can't really do that because I've got to play domestic competitions, play for Queensland, my state, which I still love and I'm enjoying doing at the moment. I still want to do that, and it makes it very difficult to sometimes play the other tournaments. But worst case scenario that I don't play for Australia in the next couple of years, and then if that's the case, then there is an opportunity to go play T20 tournaments after that. So for me at the moment, it's about coming back to international cricket.
Well, you talked about playing for Queensland, and I think that very few people right now would know Brisbane more than you, because you have a massive experience there, some 22 first-class games, 6 centuries. But recently we saw Australia. I mean, they lost in Brisbane after over 30 years. So how do you look back to that game? I mean, what went wrong?
It's a good question. I don't know. We didn't have we talk about momentum. I'm not sure if it was momentum. I just don't think, in Sydney also, we had a game that we probably should have won, could have won. Our bowlers couldn't finish it off, unfortunately. And then same thing happened in Gabba. I thought we had enough runs to defend. If a team chases that many runs in the final day, no matter where it is, they deserve to win, because it's never easy to chase runs in the 4th innings, no matter where you are in the world. I think at the end of the day, India were a better team. They played our fast bowlers, I guess, better than we thought they would. They blunted our pace attack. They blunted Nathan Lyon, and our bowlers couldn't finish it off. And it was as simple as that. That can happen. That's the beauty of cricket. I actually thought it was really good for the game. In Australia, there was a lot of outrage because obviously we haven't lost in 30 years. But I think that's the beauty of the game. I mean, it's not fun what's the point if you can't lose somewhere? And the point is both teams can win, right? So I think it was great for the game. Obviously disappointing as an Australian fan, but I think it was great for the game because to do it at the Gabba, no one would have ever expected it, particularly from India.
And that test match was played out of the season in Brisbane. I mean, normally we see a test match being played there in November. Do you think that was one of the reasons, or you think that Indian team, they would have beaten Australia in any month of the year?
Yeah, I think they were playing better than Australia at the time. And that's, I think their bowling was better than our bowling. I think the batting was quite similar. Both teams were getting similar amounts of runs. I just think their bowling was better than our bowling during that series. It was as simple as that. Even though they had a lot of injuries, they kept bringing out other bowlers who were showing our bowlers up. We had quite a solid batting lineup. They were scoring runs. I think the wicket might have been not as juicy as the Gabba normally is day one, and that probably played into the Indians' hands. Normally Gabba, you get a juicy first day wicket and then it evens out and becomes a really nice batting. Still plenty of bounce, but if you don't leave it hard at the start, it can be a very slow wicket, but you have to get it right. And maybe the wicket was a bit slower than normal at the Gabba. From all reports, it was. And then when that happens, both teams are kind of, if you bring a fast wicket, I feel like the gap between Australia and India just widens. Just like if you bring a massive spinning wicket, the gap between Australia and India seems to widen too. And I think the wicket at that time might have just been a little bit slower, but at the end of the day, it was the same for both teams. So you can't take any credit away from India.
Now coming back towards PSL, obviously as we talked about this fact that this is your first PSL, so are you looking at this tournament as an opportunity to stage a comeback, or like what are your thoughts right now with this Islamabad United team?
No, look, first and foremost, I just want obviously to contribute and to perform and to get us the third title. I mean, that's important. That's the number one most important thing when you're playing these tournaments. As I said earlier, you have to give it your all. You have to be in it 100%. So I'm in it for Islamabad 100%. It's a little bit different when it's a small tournament. So I think we only have 6 games left, which in T20s it's not a lot. You normally expect to play like a 10 match tournament minimum, and then you sort of get a feel for your teammates and the team, and you can get in a rhythm and whatnot. So it'll be a bit fast paced with a smaller tournament, but a goal is to win the tournament, and that's I think that's a goal for everyone in the team. And when you play franchise cricket around the world, that's always the case. So I try not to think too much about myself. I learned a long time ago, the more I concentrate on the team, the better I perform. So I try to do that as much as I can.
Well, as you said that if they win it, it will be third time that they will have won the PSL, and they're one of the better teams in the PSL. But most of their wins, they have come without any player from Islamabad. I mean, we don't have too many players from Islamabad. But even though you are from Australian, obviously, but just because you were born there in Islamabad, so is there any excitement in the camp that finally that they have somebody who was born in Islamabad?
I gotta be honest, I'm not really sure because I haven't talked to too many people in the camp yet. I've just been WhatsApping them because we've been in ISO. So I haven't got to meet all my teammates yet or the management. But look, I'm excited because obviously that's where I was born. It's pretty funny. And I play for Sydney Thunder and I grew up there. I grew up in Western Sydney and with the Western Sydney Thunder. That's where I grew up when I was younger. And I'm playing obviously for Islamabad in the PSL, and Islamabad was where I was born. And it's everywhere. It's written on my passport. It's everywhere where you're born, Islamabad. It's where my family moved when I was younger. So look, it'd be really nice to win this tournament with Islamabad because it obviously has a nice little lineage. But I think there's still a lot of hard work to be done between now and then for us to do that. But I to be honest, I'm excited to be playing the PSL just amongst. I've played against a lot of these guys before. I've never played with Pakistani players before. Obviously, being around the world, I haven't. I think I might have played. I might have been in Lancashire when Junaid Khan was there a long time ago. That's probably I played with Azhar Mahmood in BBL when he was with Thunder. There's only a handful of Pakistanis I've actually played with. Obviously, Fawad Ahmed is a bit like me, Pakistani/Australian, Australian/Pakistani. I've played with him for a long time, and it's nice. He's in the Islamabad team too, so there's already a friendly face I know there. So look, I'm just looking forward to meeting the guys and then hopefully playing some good cricket.
Usman, just one last question, but I think that this interview won't be completed if we don't get to hear your Urdu. So आप हमें ये बताएं कि अभी ऑस्ट्रेलिया ने नेक्स्ट साल मार्च में पाकिस्तान आना है. आपको लगता है कि ऑस्ट्रेलिया को पाकिस्तान का टूर करना चाहिए, और आपकी कोई होगी मोटिवेशन कि आप भी उस टूर का हिस्सा हो?
I think 100% ऑस्ट्रेलिया को आना चाहिए पाकिस्तान में. I think पाकिस्तान ने last 4 or 5 years में enough show कर दिया कि security भी बहुत अच्छी है, players को बहुत comfortable feel जो भी आ रहे हैं PSL के लिए वो भी बहुत comfortable feel कर रहे हैं. तो I think ऑस्ट्रेलिया की नया opportunity है. I think maybe England के भी मैंने सुना है England को भी maybe आना है पाकिस्तान. I think responsibility है दूसरी टीम जैसे England ऑस्ट्रेलिया को ऑस्ट्रेलिया आना है पाकिस्तान, क्योंकि नंबर 1 पाकिस्तान में इतने साल तक नहीं खेला है. तो रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी हमारे लिए कि आने पाकिस्तान में और क्रिकेट खेलना है, क्योंकि ऑब्वियसली दुबई में खेल रहे हैं, अबू धाबी में खेल, बाकी सेम नहीं होता, क्योंकि आपको ऑब्वियसली ऑस्ट्रेलिया को आना है और पाकिस्तान में ही खेलना है. और आई थिंक क्रिकेट के लिए अच्छा है अगर ऑस्ट्रेलिया आएगा. मैंने कहा है पहले इंग्लिश इंटरव्यू में कहा है पहले कि ऑस्ट्रेलिया को जाना चाहिए पाकिस्तान में और खेलनी है, क्योंकि I think पाकिस्तान वेट कर रहा है किसी चीज़ के लिए, until someone actually makes the move, I think it won't be complete for Pakistan. So inshallah हम देखेंगे और इंशाल्लाह होएगा।
जी उस्मान, बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया, और हमारी दुआएं हैं कि आप इस पीएसएल में इस्लामाबाद की टीम को एंजॉय करें, पीएसएल को एंजॉय करें, और यहाँ की बिरयानी को भी आप एंजॉय करें।
मैंने ऑलरेडी एक बिरयानी खा ली, आई थिंक दैट माइट बी इनफ।
आप अभी काफी टाइम में, टूर्नामेंट स्टार्ट होने में आप एक दो और भी खा सकते हैं।
ट्रक आई थिंक यार गर्मी भी बहुत होती है, तो काफ़ी कैलोरीज मैं बर्न करूँगा, तो मे भी ऑप्शन होएगा खाने के लिए।
बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया हमें ज्वाइन करने का, और होपफुली जिस तरीके से आप ऑस्ट्रेलिया के लिए खेलते रहे हैं, सिडनी थंडर के लिए खेलते रहे हैं, हम आपको उसी तरह फॉर्म में इस्लामाबाद के लिए भी देखेंगे।
थैंक यू वेरी मच।